Welcome to a very special live episode of Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Saturday, February 10th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Akron game in 203 days, the game against Michigan in 294 days. We're doing it live today because news is breaking around the Ohio State football program. Bill O'Brien's long and storied tenure as Ohio State's offensive coordinator is now over. He is taking the Boston College head coaching job. And we also know who is replacing Bill O'Brien as Ohio State's next offensive coordinator. It is going to be Chip Kelly, UCLA head coach, no longer the UCLA head coach. He just left the Bruins. UCLA put out a statement on it. It is officially official. Chip Kelly, no longer the UCLA head coach. He is going to be headed to Ohio State. We're going to have some Tony Gerdeman is going to join me live here in just a second. But while we're waiting for it, there's Tony. A very interesting tweet from our buddy Marcus Hartman of the Dayton Daily News about the long and storied backstory on this whole thing. Martin Jarmond, when he was the Boston College athletic director, hired Jeff Hafley away from Ryan Day at Ohio State. Hafley leaves BC. Bill O'Brien replaces Hafley. Ryan Day, Bill O'Brien goes back to BC. Ryan Day hires Chip Kelly away from Jarmond at UCLA. Tony Gerdeman, it is one of these, like the food chain or something like that, where each of the animals is just eating another animal, but somehow at the end, the little animal goes around. I guess in Ouroboros is probably what we're looking for here, where the snake eats its own tail.
Is this like time is a flat circle kind of thing? And, just everything becomes what it once was twice over, something like that. So, yeah, pretty interesting. There's so many strange bedfellows throughout all of this. And maybe the least strange or most strange being that Ryan Day was Chip Kelly's quarterback way back when Chip Kelly was the offensive coordinator at New Hampshire. And, but yeah, and then the Jeff Hafley thing is just thinking back to Wednesday when Ryan Day was asked, hey, man, Jeff Hafley, man, he's like, God dang, just like he held himself back from cursing worse. But you could see, like, I wish that guy, you give that guy one job and he just continues to ruin things for you. But I did see a post on our message board that the absolute funniest thing at this point would be for Jim Knowles to take the UCLA job.
That is true. That would be really funny. Yeah, Jim Knowles has the possibility to do the funniest possible thing. We'll see what UCLA does with their job. I guess it's not a huge surprise. It is simultaneously absolutely bizarre for someone to leave a sitting Big Ten head coach to leave a non-Indiana, non-Northwestern kind of school. UCLA is considered not a blue blood in the sport, but certainly a brand name in the sport. They're now in the Big Ten. You've got some financial stability. You're playing in one of the two big leagues. And you leave a head coaching position there to take a coordinator position at Ohio State. And this is not officially official yet, but there's lots of reports from very reliable sources saying things like, Chip Kelly is expected to join Ohio State as its next offensive coordinator, which when you look at some of the names attached to those reports, the Bruce Feldmans of the world, it's pretty much a done deal. And this sort of matches what we had been hearing that, hey, if O'Brien does leave, this is probably where Ryan Day is going to turn. Still, when coaches left MAC head coaching jobs to take coordinator positions at Power 5 schools, Sean Lewis, for example, leaving the Kent State job to take the Colorado offensive coordinator position, it was like, well, that's interesting, but I wonder if that's a statement on, the place of the MAC in modern college football. Tony, what is the statement when Chip Kelly leaves UCLA, the head coaching position at a Big Ten school, to take a coordinator position at Ohio State?
Well, I think it says something about UCLA and their place right now. You have people saying, reports saying that he probably would have been fired this past year, but UCLA didn't have the $8.5 million to do it. And if you are a major program and you don't want to fork over $8.5 million to fire your head coach in a football program, I mean, that should be something that you can find in the couch cushions in the team room. And for them to not be able to do that, it's kind of like Chip Kelly sees the writing on the wall, like, you guys can't even afford to fire me. I gotta quit. That sort of thing. Also knowing, like, I'm probably not long for this job. People do want him out. But also the men's basketball coach is complaining about the lack of funding and things like that. And, so there are plenty of issues going on at UCLA right now. And then now they're coming into the Big Ten. And, maybe one day we'll do a show about where does UCLA rank in the Big Ten realism, like realistically, not, the 1980s, the 1970s, they are a blue blood. They are a sleeping giant. What are they right now? Are they less than Northwestern? Chip Kelly has done some good things at UCLA, but this is something where people were always asking, is Ohio State offensive coordinator a better job than Boston College head coach? And people would say yes. Right now, I think you could say the same thing for the Ohio State offensive coordinator job, just because things are so bad financially at UCLA. And also for having the best venue in college football, maybe the best venue in sports, it's not a draw because it's not a campus thing.
Right. UCLA has something of, and Lord forgive me for the comparison I'm just about to make, but
Miami
it's a little
don't.
similar to. Okay, good. You said it. I didn't have to. If you're playing your home games in Hard Rock Stadium and your campus is in Coral Gables, that's one of several reasons why Miami does not ever draw well. UCLA has a similar thing where the campus is in Westwood, the stadium's in Pasadena, and while I have very different views of the Rose Bowl as a stadium and a college football venue, as from what I view Hard Rock Stadium as, you run into some of the same issues. And UCLA it's a spot where I think you run into some expectation issues, because it's not like Chip Kelly has been terrible at UCLA. He had a couple rough years to start with, but since the COVID season, 2021 and through the present, 8-4, 9-4, 8-5. That's perfectly fine. That's you're in the sort of low end of the top 25, others receiving votes kind of end of things. I don't know, it's not like UCLA has this incredible history of being super fantastic at all times. I'm just looking at their they have had 3 times they have finished the season ranked since 1998. So since the Bob Toledo era, 1998, they have finished the season ranked 3 times, other than the time that Chip Kelly did. It's, this is very much an is what it is program, and it's generally been the second best program in Los Angeles for pretty much the last 25 years. And it's in a conference, it has been in a conference, which is the, 4th, maybe best conference. And just the resources are not necessarily there. And with recruiting being a little more national, you can't necessarily keep some of that Southern California talent home. Speaking of Southern California talent, Kevin Noon has joined the show. Kevin, let's get your initial thoughts on Bill O'Brien out, Chip Kelly in.
Boy, we hardly knew ye, Bill O'Brien. It was quick. It was a Bill Sheridan type of existence, but I will always have fond memories there. I think Chip Kelly was the decision that made a lot of sense, but I figured they were going to fritter around a little bit more. But Ryan Day is out for blood or something like that. There was no screwing around here.
Do you think, do you think that Chip Kelly, is there a possibility that Chip Kelly was actually Ryan Day's first choice, but decided against it because of the familiarity?
I think there's a chance that Chip Kelly was Ryan Day's first choice, but Chip Kelly was thinking he might get an NFL job, which would be, that because he was certainly linked to some NFL jobs. And at the time, what was it, 3 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, when Ohio State was kind of going through this the first time, Chip Kelly may have still thought, well, let's get through the NFL hiring cycle. I would prefer to do that. And now that those jobs are largely filled, now you'd kind of know, okay, that's not an option. So now this is the next best option. And so it's, you don't necessarily want to be someone's plan B, but I think they were, I think they ended up both maybe being each other's plan Bs, and that, that doesn't mean it doesn't work. I know I'm going to have Ross Fulton on tomorrow's morning show to kind of dive deep on his thoughts on this. But, the initial thoughts that he shared were, broadly positive, I would say. So, this is something where, you have Chip Kelly has, I'm expecting he's presumably going to kind of handle the quarterbacks, right? So he's kind of taking the offensive coordinator spot, but also the quarterback coach spot, which, that's a pretty substantial lift off of Ryan Day's plate.
Yeah, I think it's important because on Wednesday, when we asked Ryan about the potential of Bill O'Brien moving on, and nobody really knew anything or was saying anything, it seemed like there was a side hatch there of where, well, if we can't get the right guy, I mean, I know how to call plays. And now that obviously they got the right guy once again, I think that it's all systems are normal. Move ahead. Nothing to see here. Let's just get on with it. And I think this is, this is a very positive step of what could have really set Ohio State back after all of this momentum that it had picked up through the month of January and here in through the first week of February and even a little bit beyond. Now they're still kind of calling from the same playbook. And, to the earlier point of the familiarity there, it's going to be an interesting dynamic with, Chip was the teacher and Ryan was the disciple. And now, the roles are flipped a little bit, so to speak.
Yeah, that's a really interesting part of this dynamic is, they know each other really well. Yes, they work together. They've worked together well in the past. All of this is absolutely true. They still have a great relationship. Ryan Day has talked about, his friendship, his continued friendship with Chip Kelly and the fact that he talks to Chip Kelly all the time. And so, this is not I'll take a shot on this, young up and comer who I don't know anything about, but maybe it'll work out. This is someone who he has known for a long time, worked well with in the past. But Tony, this is still kind of a weird flip in that dynamic where Ryan Day was working under Chip Kelly and now Chip Kelly's working under Ryan Day. That's, I guess it's not going to be a surprise for Chip Kelly that that's the case. He knows what he's signing up for, but that's still going to be kind of a weird work dynamic, I would think.
Not unlike when Obi-Wan Kenobi and Darth Vader met up and the student struck down the teacher. So hopefully the two of them can get along a bit better than that. But I'll be interested to see if there are times, because these guys haven't coached together since 2016 in San Francisco. They spent 4 seasons together, 3 in Philadelphia, 1 in San Francisco. So it's been a while. Ryan Day is not the same guy he was back then. Certainly not as a head coach. He's grown a lot as a coach in general. But it will be interesting to see as Chip Kelly and they're working together if Chip Kelly ever sees himself in Ryan when things are happening or play calling or thought processes. One of the reasons Kevin Wilson and Ryan Day were so good together is they pretty much shared a brain in terms of the play calling and with the offense, what they needed to do. So I wonder how quickly those two guys will, in a different sci-fi way, mind meld, Tom, and get that. But it is an interesting dynamic. How many times have we seen this before? It's not unheard of when somebody goes back and is they have this kind of situation, this switcheroo. This is another research project maybe for the summer, Tom. Go ahead and put that one on the list as well as we keep building these up over the last few days. But if you look at what he's done, Chip Kelly, even in his 6 seasons at UCLA, the first 2 seasons were pretty rough. But 3rd season, they were 2nd in scoring. 4th season, they were 1st in scoring. 2022, they were 3rd in scoring. This past year, they had a rough season, 9th in scoring. So had some quarterback issues and things like that. But I encourage people to go back and look at his time at Oregon because it was pretty ridiculous, leading the conference in scoring all 6 years at Oregon, 2 as an offensive coordinator, 4 as a head coach. His last 2 years scoring 46 and 49.6 points per game. So this was a guy back then, and his first year in the NFL won an NFL Coach of the Year award. So a ton of bona fides. One of my concerns with him was that when I would talk to people for the last few weeks about Chip Kelly as offensive coordinator, say, I don't know if you can have 2 coordinators who don't necessarily recruit a lot. Jim Knowles is not known as a recruiter. Chip Kelly, I think it's kind of okay, because for one, I don't think he's a long-term solution for Ryan Day, not the quarterback's coach, not the offensive coordinator. So I don't think like nobody goes to Alabama for Pete Golding. They go for, they would go for Nick Saban, or they're not going for Kevin Steele. They're going, to be coached by Nick Saban. So, and the fact that Ohio State already has a 2025 quarterback, they're in pretty good on a 2026 guy, 2027 guy is the coach's son, so they're seemingly they're okay in that scenario. So like the recruiting aspect of it doesn't necessarily bother me as much as I think about it now, but it's going to be fun. I don't expect you guys to see the tempo that Chip Kelly would run at Oregon, because I don't know that that's I don't know if that's what they're going to do anymore. And it's not necessarily what he did at UCLA either, though.
No. And so we get a super chat from M Stem. Wants to know, does UCLA have a super tackle that might transfer? And Kevin and I, based on Kevin's comments in the chat, Kevin and I were doing the exact same research just now. So Kevin, what did you find when you looked up the all Pac-12 conference team?
In the short answer is no, they don't have one that could transfer. They had a second team all conference tackle, Duke Clemens, or an offensive lineman who was a redshirt senior. So he is probably out of eligibility. And then I went to the honorable mentions and I did not see an offensive lineman on the list. So no, I think the best thing out there in the current portal right now, or could be in the portal, keep an eye still on Ozzie Trapillo from Boston College. But as I had said on my show earlier today, it seems like he's going to wait this out, see the new coach, Bill O'Brien, as we know now, kind of hear the pitch there, and then probably make a decision from that point. But there's just not somebody that you could pluck away that was like an immediate performer. Now, maybe there's somebody that was a young pup that just was like the sixth lineman that there are big thoughts for, that Justin Fry would have recruited. But at this point, I am unaware of anybody. But I've also had about a grand total of 11 minutes to be able to process this between errands and shows and everything.
And, I think that is an interesting point you raised there, that Justin Fry, between, right before he came to Ohio State, he was hired away as the offensive line coach at UCLA. That's where he came to Ohio State from. So, if there is a third-year offensive lineman at UCLA that, maybe right on the verge of stardom, Justin Fry would be one of the most qualified people on the planet to tell you, to know who that is and what he likes about that person and have an existing relationship. So as is the case with all of these teams, Boston College and Michigan and Alabama and UCLA and everyone else that's been replacing a coach this season, there is a 30-day window where the transfer portal opens for players from the team whose head coach has just left. So there is a possibility you see someone else in that transfer portal. Justin Fry would have a pretty good sense for who that might be. So we will we'll see how that all shakes out. I guess it's easy to make jokes about what was your favorite moment of the Bill O'Brien time at Ohio State, but it feels like there was some consequential stuff that happened during Bill O'Brien's time at Ohio State that they brought in a couple transfers from Alabama that he was at least sort of peripherally involved in recruiting, or in the case of Seth McLaughlin, coaching. So this feels, I guess, Kevin, this is not an insubstantial contribution for Bill O'Brien, considering how long he was at Ohio State.
Well, to go back to something else that Ryan Day had mentioned, that Bill O'Brien came in and did an inventory and went through some of these things, and they're going to have all of those notes. And now Chip Kelly's going to come in and they're going to do an inventory and they're going to have all of those notes. And then you can kind of look at some things and compare and contrast. And I think all of that, in terms of the less sexy things that we don't talk about as much, I think all of that's there. Julian Sayin was somebody that was recruited because remember, recruitments are not just senior years. It goes on multiple years. So there was some familiarity with Julian Sayin. I think that just a lot of things are there based on the 3 weeks. As much as we want to sit there and diminish what can get done in 3 weeks, I think that we will lose sight of it. But the book that we could be writing this season about hopefully a national championship year, I think we can maybe see if we can get Bill O'Brien to do the foreword or something like that, because that's about the amount of time that he was around.
Yeah, he not a long tenure, but an interesting one. I've seen several people in the chat asking about PJ Fleck leaving for UCLA, and I was just looking up to see if that was something that was getting sort of okay. Yeah, so there are some people floating that Sports Illustrated or the corpse of Sports Illustrated reporting that PJ Fleck could be the top candidate for the UCLA job. That's getting passed around quite a bit. I mean, boy, this is one of these things where, yeah, I mean, that's a better job than Minnesota, certainly. But, and then Sino Scoop asked if PJ Fleck leaves for UCLA and in Minnesota players available. And the answer is yes, they're all potentially available. I don't know if any of them are a great fit for Ohio State. Now I got to look up the Big Ten, all Big Ten offensive line. But, I mean, this is that one, Tony, if it's PJ Fleck going to UCLA, that one is much more of a traditional, okay, this makes, this is a more traditionally sensible college football head coaching kind of move than leaving UCLA for the Ohio State offensive coordinator position.
Right. And I do see Minnesota had a second team all Big Ten offensive tackle, but I don't know what year he was. But yeah, this is what's supposed to happen. You're supposed to go from Minnesota to UCLA. You're not supposed to, do what Chip Kelly is doing. But I don't know that we can rely on the supposed to's, because college football is a completely different animal than it was years ago. And honestly, Minnesota is in a better spot right now than UCLA to have success in terms of, where things are financially for them, their footing. But the possibilities at UCLA are obviously higher. So, is PJ Fleck at this point, he's done everything he can do at Minnesota. And now that you've lost the divisions, you've lost your window to win the Big Ten. So now, or even win a division. So now you think, well, I should probably go somewhere there's more potential, that will is certainly warmer. I think maybe that might also be. How long can you actually live in Minnesota without being like, I need to get out of here? Like Kent Herbeck, like I doubt he still lives there. He probably, as soon as he retired from the Twins, he's like, I am out of here. There's no way Joe Mauer goes to Florida State for football or for baseball and football, and then goes and plays Minnesota. I guarantee he's moving back to Florida. So PJ Fleck, it would be interesting. He's an energetic. UCLA needs energy. And for as fast as Chip Kelly likes to play, he doesn't always seem like he's got that much energy in terms of recruiting. So I think, Fleck's not going to be there forever at Minnesota. So you got to move on eventually. This wouldn't be a bad opportunity for him, I don't think. It's just, you got to give him time, because it's going to be ground zero for 2 or 3 years, I think.
The show coach was on the air for 9 years, and that took place in Minnesota. This will be the 8th year for PJ Fleck. So he's getting up against the Craig T. Nelson ceiling, so to speak.
Well, that was Minnesota State, though. So,
but it's still Minnesota. Come on,
it's the state.
I mean, and then maybe they can elevate Dauber.
Yeah, the Hayden Fox line. That's what they call it. What is the what's the guy from Cocoon? Wilford Brimley. Yeah, it's like the Wilford Brimley line that if you're younger than Wilford Brimley was when he did the movie Cocoon, the Hayden Fox line. That if you've coached as long as Hayden Fox did at Minnesota State, it may be time to leave. Although I will say, shout out to Minnesota in like July and August. Like you're a real one. February, January, maybe not, but yeah, that is a great place to be during the summer. I'm trying to figure out Erante Ursure. All pronunciations are approximate. He was their second team offensive tackle last year for Minnesota. Obviously, we are sort of speculating multiple levels deep at this point in terms of coaching positions that could open, transfer portal additions that could, people who could go into the transfer portal. Last year was his 5th year. He does technically have another year left, and I can't find whether he is officially declared for the NFL draft or not. So the answer is, even if all of these things happen, the answer is maybe. So there you go. Breaking news. Market says Dinkytown in Minneapolis is awesome, though. Like it is really legitimately a wonderful state. If you go up there during the right time of the year. So
it's a beautiful week up there. It's a beautiful week.
It's yeah, you can go. Everyone is having fun with you, Garrett C. Wright, host of the Daily Huddle, says it's fantastic that Tony dishes out 2 Minnesota Twins who are from Minnesota as wanting to leave. Well, Jerry Emmett got out. I mean,
He's a Cubs fan. What does he know?
But Jerry also goes back.
yes, he does. Yeah, it is.
Well,
I will say,
somebody's got to hang out at Iron River or whatever the hell it was that he talked about, like fishing out barges and some of these stories he's told us.
Knife
Mhm.
River.
Knife River.
I will say Minnesota in September is also fantastic and
Mhm.
a great place to walk around wearing a shower curtain in the rain.
Who would do that, Tony? I don't understand. Interesting mention here from SK.
Ooh.
Coy Parrish, who is a safety, who is a true freshman, just signed with Minnesota. That was someone that Ohio State made a real push for. Really, really talented, highly touted safety prospect. Really, really viewed, highly by the national recruiting folks as well. He ended up going to Minnesota, passing up on Ohio State. He's from northern Minnesota, somewhere I think by Duluth, I believe, some small town up there. But he is, that's certainly another name. If PJ Fleck were to leave Minnesota and take the UCLA job, which was just vacated by Chip Kelly, because Chip Kelly's going to Ohio State for the offensive coordinator position, because Bill O'Brien's going to BC for the head coaching position. Boy, there's we are like doing college football inception on this show.
Can I ask you say PJ Fleck goes, does Jason Candle then go to Minnesota? And is there anybody on the Toledo?
Yes. I mean, I don't know. I don't know the Toledo roster. You froze there for a second, but we may be playing this game of hopscotch up until kickoff at this point. At some point, Joe Moorhead could leave Akron, and then maybe they'll just cancel game one. I mean, who the hell knows? I mean, who knows? I mean, maybe Parker Fleming gets a job out of this.
Yeah, that's there's just this endless parade of guys jumping from one job to another, and it always just creates another opening. We should talk real briefly, since we're talking about different coaching hirings and offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator hirings. Let's talk a little bit about Michigan hiring its new defensive coordinator, Wink Martindale, out of the NFL. He was, renowned when he was with the Baltimore Ravens, and he had really good players. And then he was with the New York Giants, and he did not have any good players. And then he got fired, and now he's the head defensive coordinator at Michigan. I mean, Tony, do you have any thoughts? I know there's sort of been some broad strokes on some of those hires, and I'm going to probably try and have Ross Fulton on a show at some point to take a little deeper dive. But what are your thoughts on Michigan hiring Wink Martindale, and maybe some of the other stuff that's happened in terms of coaches leaving and staying up in Michigan?
Yeah, I did have an NFL person reach out to me and just say that they like the hire, but they are an NFL person, so they think NFL is always better than college, but also said he'll blitz a lot, which then got me thinking about Don Brown. But I don't think it's going to be necessarily like that. And I've seen some of the Michigan X's and O's Twitter accounts talking about Wink Martindale, how probably have to do things a little bit differently. But also, I think it's Michigan has done this NFL defense thing for a few years now, and it has worked for them. Once they got away from Don Brown and started going to the John Harbaugh tree and the NFL tree, it's been an interesting transition, and it's been an interesting attack to college offenses and perhaps Ohio State's pro offense. Maybe that was the impetus behind that. And certainly the abuse that Don Brown's defenses took and Jim Harbaugh wanting a solution for that led to a different type of defensive coordinator. But, we'll see. I always have a concern about NFL guys coming in and recruiting, and especially I think Michigan is, like I said, they have a chance to recruit better with Sherrone Moore than Jim Harbaugh, but I don't know that Wink Martindale is any kind of recruiter. When was the last time, if I scan through here, he was Western Kentucky as the defensive coordinator in 2000 to 2003. Can anybody tell me any blue chippers that he signed there at Western Kentucky when they were probably still FCS?
Yes, I think they might have been just brand new in FBS at that point, but not long. I don't know. Maybe he brought Big Red in. I'm not sure. That would be certainly a blue chipper. I do want to correct myself. As Gerald Jack says, Wink resigned from the Giants. He was not fired, which, lots of people resign jobs and don't get fired. That's one of the ways you can. He didn't resign due to excellence in performance in the 2023 college football or NFL season. That's, I think, the central point there. But I do want to correct the record there. When you look at how people talk about his defenses, and he's going to play a lot of press man, he's going to bring pressure, like you said. That's the kind of stuff that works if you have a good pass rush and you have good corners who you can trust to play press man-to-man, one-on-one, leave them on an island kind of coverage. And that might work this year when you've got Will Johnson and you've got Mason Graham and you got Kenneth Grant and you've got some talent. This is going to be a talented Michigan defense. I don't know how that's going to work in 2025 when some of those guys leave and then you're looking at the recruiting rankings and all that. And there is not a Will Johnson sitting behind Will Johnson right now on the Michigan bench. So we'll see how that goes. But it certainly is. If he does what he typically does, it sounds like that's sort of a high risk, high reward thing. But Kevin, they might have the talent this year with everyone they've got coming back on defense to actually pull that off.
Well, let's not forget that they were hiring Joe Cullen up until the second that they weren't hiring Joe Cullen. They bring in Wink Martindale the next day, and within hours he is the guy and gets the job. So was that the end of their due diligence, or was he just like kind of the end of their list and they're like, oh, all right, well, we got to have somebody. Somebody's got to do this. Yeah, they certainly, can they keep people from bolting on the defensive line? That's really the question. You have the super, super talented defensive tackles. Those are the two guys I think of first with the defense, with Will Johnson being adjacent. And then, there's some other guys, but they did lose some big pieces. This hire just kind of feels like, I don't know. I've not talked to any NFL personnel about it yet. I've not had the opportunity because everything else that has happened today. It just seems like something, a name that's kind of bounced around, and he's had his high points and he's had his low points. And as Tony said, in Baltimore, when he had great athletes, they did fantastic. And when he didn't have great athletes in New York, we kind of saw what we got there. And will he have enough great athletes across the board to be able to do the things that it is he wants to do? I don't know enough about what his real methods are and what he likes to do. How much of a departure is it from Jesse Minter and things like that? Are they going to have to relearn a lot of things? A lot of times we talk about, well, coaches want to come in and put their system, but the real successful coaches come in and adapt their system to what the talent is that they have. And then you recruit toward what you would like your system to be. Wink Martindale's been around the block more than a couple times. I think that he has an understanding of that, but an understanding and execution are not always congruent.
Well, and I would expect a step back this year. I don't know how big, just because it's year one of a new system, new defensive coordinator. We saw Jim Knowles in year one improve the defense because it needed to improve, but you've seen it was better this past year. So I'm not expecting the elite Wink Martindale defense just yet, just because it takes time for guys to learn it and master it. So I think there'll be some time that it takes for that to happen. And in terms of the transfer window, it is, I think, exactly 2 weeks left that Michigan players have to hit the portal.
Yeah, we'll see. They have held the things together so far pretty well. I don't think I've seen anyone of any consequence go in there out of Michigan since Harbaugh left. That was obviously one of the big pieces of keeping Sherrone Moore, as I think they were planning on keeping the staff together as well, and that has not worked as well as the roster. But so far, no notable Michigan names heading into the portal since Harbaugh left. Tony, I did want to bring this one up from Billy Tuesday, from game show host to college football coach. What a career arc! The universe took away Parker Lewis, Ohio State place kicker, from us. He entered the portal, so we did not get to make that tired 1980s reference vis-a-vis Ohio State football. But Tony, we do get Wink Martindale references all the way down now when we get to talk about Michigan. So, I think it all worked out okay.
I do, like, somebody tweeted at you that instead of a headset, he should have to call plays into a skinny microphone. I thought that was fantastic.
Yes.
So yeah, all kinds of 80s and 70s next to that. And is it okay to cross cross-pollinate, cross-reference other game shows, or does it have to be Wink Martindale only game shows? Because I think that's the truer sense. How far off the path do we go when we do this? Just let's set the groundwork now.
Yeah, I had to look up Wink Martindale game shows this morning just to make sure I wasn't confusing him, like, oh, that was actually a Ray Combs game show or whatever. Like I wanted to make sure we stayed true to the source material initially. But yeah, I think he has a lot of game shows. He hosted a lot of game shows over the years. I was remembering him hosting Supermarket Sweep, but apparently that did not happen. I got
different guy, different game show host looking guy.
Yeah, I got Mandela affected on Wink Martindale, former host of Supermarket Sweep. But it was there's a lot of source material. I think we stay true to the source material right now and don't branch out yet until the original material gets tired and gets worn out.
If something goes bad, can we say tic tac no as opposed to tic tac toe, which was always a great show of his?
That seems like yes. That seems like that. I will definitely allow that one. Hollywood Hagar says, "What's good, guys? Do you think he'll run the no huddle, no mercy offense?" Kevin, I'm not expecting Chip Kelly to run the Chip Kelly offense as much as I'm expecting Chip Kelly to maybe make slight variations or slight tweaks to the Ryan Day offense.
Well, I think with having a veteran quarterback in Will Howard, you do have the ability to send him to the line with a couple of plays and be able maybe to run a quicker offense. It was something we said earlier in the show. It's not going to be the absolute machine gun speed of the Oregon offense. It's just not where we are in terms of football today. I mean, you do have teams that obviously run faster than others, and I think Ohio State has the ability to do that, but it's been, they had, last year it was Kyle McCord in his first year. I mean, I don't think they're going to immediately throw Will Howard out and say, here you go, you got free reign. I mean, whether or not we have headphones in the helmets by that point or whatnot, because nobody would want to steal signs or anything like that. But no, I don't. I think that you need to try and find a happy medium there. Run tempo when you can. What drives me crazy is when they run up to the line like they're going to go, and then they step back, and then undoubtedly somebody jumps offside because has a false start because they just can't hang on. It just seems like a real self-inflicted wound when you do that.
And just to get some thoughts from some of our X's and O's guys, Justin Whitlock, who's one of our X's and O's guys at BuckeyeHuddle.com, tweeted, "The Kelly hire checks all the boxes. Chip can call it and game plan the offense with Day's help. Will free up Day for culture/program management. Chip can focus on the ball and let Day and Heartline recruit. Let Day be the CEO. Former big-time head coach can mentor Day on how to be the CEO." And it also, Tony, frees up Ryan Day potentially. We don't know what the 10th coaching spot is going to be yet, the 10th assistant, but potentially frees up Day to spend some more time with the special teams.
Yeah, and that's what he wants to do. And when we've talked about this in the past, I said that, you don't need a special teams coordinator, but if they don't land an offensive coordinator who calls plays, and I think all of the assumptions right now are that Chip Kelly will call plays, if you don't land somebody that calls plays, and that takes Ryan Day away from special teams, which then may cause him to bring in a special teams coordinator. So this offensive coaching and this offensive coordinator hire would seemingly open up a defensive spot for an assistant defensive line coach, a linebackers coach to replace Jim Knowles and let him just be the coordinator, or however you want to do it. So yeah, that's something we haven't touched on yet, and shouldn't have taken 38 minutes, Tom. I'm just going to be honest with you. This should have been the lead story for this, that, hey, this hire means no special teams coordinator. Everybody go celebrate. And now watch as this entire thing has been one mystery after another in terms of trying to get information correct, information, bad information. And we're saying there's going to be no special teams coordinator. And then tomorrow, the first coaching announcement will be that Ohio State has hired a special teams coordinator. And you can all thank Tom.
Yeah, that's it's not a given. There is still a vacant spot on the coaching staff. And, that could end up being James Laurinaitis. That could end up being a defensive line coach in waiting. That could end up being a special teams coordinator. That could end up being something else entirely. We will have to kind of wait and see. David Brown says 2 of us are wearing UCLA blue, and while that is, my undershirt is kind of UCLA blue, and Tony's is as well. I got to tell you, when I got dressed, I was not anticipating doing a live show from an ice rink. So here we are. Seems to be a kind of a common thread these days, as stuff is just kind of constantly happening. We had a pretty good sense that the Bill O'Brien to Boston College thing had a pretty good chance of happening, and that Chip Kelly had a pretty good chance of being the next guy. I was not expecting, though, Kevin, the Chip Kelly news to follow the Bill O'Brien news quite that quickly, where it was, one thing happened and then boom, it's like someone pulled the fire alarm and Chip Kelly's already outside the building.
Yeah, I was doing Big Meat Kickoff and went about an hour 15. At about the 55-minute mark, somebody put something in the comments. It's like, Chip Kelly is happening. I'm like, what? So I pulled up my social media, pulled up Twitter, and saw the Pete Thamel report. I'm like, well, we can just erase the previous 55 minutes of this show and we'll focus on the next 20, as it appears this is kind of happening. Was not my anticipation that it was going to happen this quickly. And something I pointed out on the show too was that when it comes to a coaching search, it's either the most obvious guy or the least obvious guy. So I wasn't willing to push all my chips in on the most obvious guy, which was Chip Kelly. A lot of other names have been kind of floated around by fans and whatnot. I certainly think that Jason Candle was a name that was kicked around the first time around. And then lo and behold, Ohio State just wanted to beat the news dump on Friday. And I appreciate them for doing it earlier. I mean, granted, Ohio State hasn't put out a release. I haven't seen a contract or anything like that, but this might allow me to have some Friday beers.
Here's from PB. Didn't Chip Kelly help invent the current spread offense? I remember Urban saying something about learning a great deal about the offense from Chip Kelly. I mean, this is kind of late 2000s, Tony, and Rich Rodriguez is generally credited with inventing the read option, and Chip Kelly kind of went off of that a little bit. Urban Meyer went off of that a little bit, and then Chip Kelly went off of that a little bit more and ran what he called the blur offense, where they were going, tempo, snapping the ball with 33 seconds left in the play clock at Oregon. That's not really what they do anymore. And I think if you look at the more recent versions of the Chip Kelly offense, I think everyone looks back and thinks DeAnthony Thomas and LaMichael James and, a bunch of little skinny, thin guys running around, running, soft, gimmicky. You look at some of the recent UCLA offenses, that's not what they've been. They've not been running the tempo thing like they did Oregon. And you got to remember, a couple of years ago, everyone was sure that LSU, myself included, everyone was sure LSU was going to go into the Rose Bowl and just just crush UCLA. And UCLA just beat their butts. Like this is not the cute little gimmicky, cartoony, fancy uniforms that offense that it used to be.
No, and you look at I mentioned earlier that the first 2 years at UCLA were kind of difficult, and then they got better the last 4. In 2020 and 2021, they were second in the Pac-12 in rushing yards per game. 2020, when they were second, it was 230 yards a game. 2021, it was 215 yards a game, and they're just a few yards out of first place on that. In 2022, they led with 237 yards rushing per game. This past year was not a great year. They still led the Pac-12 in rushing, 198 yards per game. And really, 4.9 yards a carry, which also tells you that they just consistently ran the ball, and there weren't necessarily a bunch of home runs, but they just stuck to it. And this was with 2 quarterbacks who weren't all that consistent, especially the true freshman Dante Moore. And so you had to work your way around that or through it. And so the running game aspect of this, I think, is what should really excite Ohio State fans. I know everybody talks about the up tempo, and we've already done that. They'll run at the tempo that Ryan Day wants. Now, will Chip say, hey, I'd like to run it more? Because remember when Tom Herman took over, Urban Meyer, when he was hired at Ohio State in late November after the Michigan game, said that not really a fan of no huddle. I like the quarterback. I like to have a huddle. I like the team to look at the quarterback in the eyes, when he's giving them their play, so that they can, be ready and they can, just feed off of the quarterback. And then Tom Herman gets here. He's like, yeah, I like to boom, 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 boom. And, he convinced Urban Meyer, let's do this. Let's move at a faster pace. with Ohio State's defense and their skill, I do wonder if Chip Kelly will be more comfortable going at a faster pace because he doesn't have to. He doesn't have the same defense to worry about. He's not trying to protect his defense necessarily. Now, Jim Knowles might be like, "Hey, let's slow things down a little bit," but also you are playing, you would hope, 16 games this year. So do you really need to try to fit 85 plays into a 16 game schedule? Like, head coaches want more and more plays, but with more games, I do now wonder if they maybe all become a little bit more conservative, at least at the top of the food chain.
Well, it's an interesting question because if you are the more talented team, you want more plays because the more plays, the more likely it is you're going to have you're going to talent will win out over a larger sample. That's kind of how it works. If you're Army or you're Navy, you are not as big, you are not as fast, you are not as strong, and you are trying to limit the number of plays when you're playing Oklahoma or someone like that because they are bigger and faster and stronger, and you are trying to give them as few possessions as you can possibly allow them. If you're the more talented team, you want more possessions, you want more snaps, you want more opportunities to let your superior athletes go do what they do. So I think broadly speaking, Ohio State is probably going to view this as an opportunity to run it maybe a little more tempo, because if you go 3 and out and you have a quick fast 3 and out, well, you have a pretty good defense, and that pretty good defense is pretty much the whole defense from last year plus Caleb Downs, which seems good. So if I'm Ohio State, I'm probably running a little more tempo stuff to give myself the opportunity to take advantage of, the variance and the chances to really just have my individual talent win out over the other guys. I think it's also an opportunity, though, Kevin, to do what Jim Harbaugh does. You don't have to learn every lesson from Jim Harbaugh. There are lots of lessons you probably should not learn from Jim Harbaugh. But the lesson that I think you do learn from Jim Harbaugh is, hey, work in all your guys. If you have 80 plays instead of 65, that's 15 more plays where your second team guys, your third team guys can get in there. That probably helps keep guys from jumping in the portal. That gets guys more ready for the future, and you're still keeping your starters fresh.
Yeah, as long as you're running your offense and your defense. I mean, Ohio State has played its younger defensive guys in games that have gotten out of hand, but it's been a little bit of a challenge offensively for them to get guys there. Oh, well, these guys need to play more football. Well, your young guys aren't playing any football, and then they're leaving. So, yeah, if you do run quicker, and I guess in theory, in doing so, you do get games put away sooner. You can get your 2s and your 3s and your 4s out there, but you can't just sit there and do that and student body left, student body right it. You've got to get out there, do some things. You got Will Howard for a year. You're going to have to trot somebody else out there next year. That you're not going to have Trevion next year. You're probably not going to have Quinshawn next year. You need to make sure that you're getting Dallin and the young kids some run there. You want to make sure that you don't have a Noah Rogers situation, a kid with all the talent in the world who takes off, and homesick is homesick. And I don't know what level he would have had to play to not be homesick. I think he still would have been homesick. But yeah, I think that running quicker and getting a couple more plays in there is good if you do the right things with it, and it's just not more garbage time.
All right, so here's one from Jeff Spangler. Says, will we get a press conference with Kelly? I thought it was weird, no press conference for Bill O'Brien. We have been sort of told that they're working on it. The TV term is efforting. They're efforting a press availability with some of the assistant coaches. There was no way in heck that we were going to get a press conference with Bill O'Brien's job status up in the air. So we got Ryan Day earlier in the week. We are still hoping. We've still been told they are working on getting us the new guys. We got the transfer guys already. We have not gotten the true freshmen yet. It'd be great to get the true freshmen. It'd be great to get the assistant coaches. Once Chip Kelly gets here, that's certainly a possibility. We will see on that one. Here's one from Odysseus. Tom, Tony, and Kevin, thoughts on a live pre-Super Bowl habanero eating challenge. Tony, who you got?
Oh, I got Kevin. Kevin's a pepper guy. So he's experienced with that. Tom, I think you tap out on what's your go-to garlic on the wings.
On the wings, I think he'll go relatively hot.
But you're a pepper person.
Well, yeah, I don't think there's any winner because of human biology.
Yeah, I'm probably not eating a ton of habaneros. I'll eat jalapenos. I'll eat jalapenos just kind of raw, but yeah, habaneros are a little more. I am old enough to know better at this point, so
Yeah.
that will probably
That's why I
limit
said
my
Kevin.
yeah. No, I strongly agree. I don't know if you saw me nodding along. I was strongly agreeing there. Kevin, Jim Gore wants to know, does Julian Sayin transfer out with the loss of Bill O'Brien?
No, I mein, he went to Ohio State for Ohio State. He didn't go necessarily because of Bill O'Brien. Um, I could come out and give you 800 words on why I don't think it's going to happen, but I don't think it would happen. If it was not I'm following Bill O'Brien there. I mean, he left because Nick Saban left. Julian Sayin isn't going to go to BC. I'll tell you that. I mean, if this was a Bill O'Brien situation, then we would have him on transfer watch to Boston College. But that's just not the case, especially with Ohio State in 25 kind of being wide open at what quarterback could be.
Yeah, and that's going to be interesting what that 2025 quarterback position looks like, because 2024, it feels like there's a lot of sentiment out there that it's going to be Will Howard this year, and that would make sense. Ryan Day was asked about whether he viewed Will Howard as the starter this year, and sort of punted on the question, but said, well, it's his last year, so I'm sure he does view himself as the likely starter, and he came here with the intention of starting. So that's both an answer and not an answer, but it does feel like there's certainly even if it is Will Howard this year, that 2025 quarterback battle between whoever else is there, is Devin Brown still there, Lincoln Keenholz, Aaron Nolan, Julian Sayin, you've got three of those names I just said were 5 stars, and the other one was a high 4-star. So tons and tons of talent in that room still. Let's see, just scrolling through some questions here. And Sean said people were concerned that Chip Kelly was not going to be able to recruit well enough at Ohio State, and Sean says Ohio State isn't bringing him in to recruit. If you need a offensive coach to help with the recruiting, you do have Brian Hartline there. Brian Hartline is still kind of an overseeing kind of coach on that offensive side of the ball. Ryan Day, obviously, on that side of the ball as well. I don't, outside of
tremendous recruiter too.
Oh yeah. And you have, if his positional group here is going to be quarterback, well, they've already got a 2025 quarterback. So they're, you're in pretty good shape for a few years. So I don't think that recruiting is going to be that's not his primary job function. When I asked Ryan Day about evaluating coaches, he did talk about recruiting being a part of it, but that's not really Chip Kelly's primary job function. Just like Tony, it's really not Jim Knowles' primary job function either.
Right, but Chip Kelly is a known quantity, so even if he's not like the most endearing person or anything like that, quarterbacks think of the offense and the points, but also it's Ryan Day's offense, it's Ryan Day's team. They're going to play for Ryan Day. Did you guys happen to find it interesting when CJ Stroud, accepting his Offensive Rookie of the Year award, thanked Ryan Day and thanked Todd Fitch, who is like the assistant quarterbacks coach, the QB analyst, if you will. I found that interesting, but yeah, this is a Ryan Day thing. This is not a Chip Kelly thing, and so I initially had some concerns just because of the lack of recruiting that he may or may not have, but it's one position, and that's Ryan Day's position.
And quickly too, the way Ohio State recruits 2 different ways, positionally and territorially.
Mm-hmm.
You're responsible for your position, and then you're going to have a territory. Give Chip Kelly out on the West Coast. Ohio State doesn't have a large hit rate out there, but I think with him being the head coach of UCLA and everything else, it's going to open up some doors. And maybe when you sit there and you bring in the position coach, you're going to get some wins there. But yeah, if you're a quarterback, if you're Jared Curtis, or you're what's the name of that big kid out of Florida that we all fell in love with at the camp, if you're one of these guys, you're more concerned with Ryan Day than you are with who the QB coach is. I mean, and that's just a reality.
Well, here's another reality. It is after 4:00. We are pushing an hour. It is 59 or so degrees outside. It is February. Okay. Shh. Go on, everyone. Before you leave, hit the thumbs up. but then go outside, enjoy this wonderful, beautiful weather. Thank you for sitting in here with us for an hour as we kind of broke down the news of Bill O'Brien's departure for Boston College, the reports that Chip Kelly will be replacing him at Ohio State. There's going to be much more to talk about on both of those fronts, especially the Chip Kelly front, and some of the other fallout from Ohio State. We're expecting another assistant coach to be named probably by the middle of next week or so. That was sort of the timetable that Ryan Day put on it. So we may have another Ohio State assistant coach coming in the next week or so. There's some recruiting stuff happening, some big names already in the class of 2025, and some more on commitment watch potentially. Got potentials, a whole bunch of transfer portal. If you've been in the chat here, you've seen lots of transfer portal speculation. We're going to be talking about all that at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Fantastic team of X's and O's guys making you a smarter football fan. Mark covering recruiting, Tony, Kevin, and I covering the team. There has been a lot to cover over the last month. There's going to be a lot more to cover in the next few weeks, and then spring ball starts in less than a month. So lots of exciting stuff going on there at BuckeyeHuddle.com. We'd love to have you there. If you're watching us here on YouTube Live, make sure you hit that thumbs up. That helps other folks find these shows. I don't really know how. They just say it does. So we appreciate that. We appreciate all you guys hopping on and joining us this afternoon. We will talk to you next time.